Now, maybe like me, you're planning to travel to Latin America and you're learning Spanish. Maybe you picked up one of these phrase books, Mexican Spanish for Travelers. These are certainly very useful. Right here, I just opened up a page, ¿Cuál es tu religión? Very useful phrase. Whenever I meet someone, I like to say, nice to meet you, I'm Jacob, what's your religion? Just to make sure we're on the same page, are you Buddhist? So right there you got, ¿Cuál es tu religión? Try that one out. Very useful when you're meeting someone. So pick up one of these books if you're learning Spanish. Extremely useful. Let's see what else they got here. What a beautiful baby. Qué bebé tan hermoso. Extremely useful phrase. In fact, I remember when I landed in Mexico, the first words that came out of my mouth were, what a beautiful baby. So that's another good one. Conga, 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 los chicos bailan conga. First question for you. You're in Panama and someone says, gracias. What do you say? De nada, we've been taught to say. You can say de nada. But if you don't want to say de nada, if you want to be different, you can try por nada. And it's got kind of a nice ring to it. So if someone says gracias and you say por nada, they might say, did this guy just say por nada? You might raise an eyebrow or two. They say, wow, where did this guy learn Spanish? In general, I recommend you learn a couple different variations of every phrase and every word you know. Maybe you woke up in a different mood and you want to say por nada. So mix it up every once in a while. You can say de nada, you can say por nada, you can say, this one I like, a ti. Gracias, a ti. Now what is a ti? I call it a boomerang phrase. Someone thanks you, what do? You send it right back to them. Gracias, a ti. You thought you were thanking me. Well, I've got news for you. Now you might want to be careful with a ti. In some cases it might not make much sense. If you've just done a tremendous favor for someone, if someone's in court and you pay their bail and they say gracias and you say a ti, they might say, what? If someone's choking on an olive and you do the Heimlich maneuver and save their life. Now, something that's bound to happen to you if you're traveling through Latin America and you don't speak perfect Spanish is someone will say something and you won't understand them. So what do you do in that case? Do you nod and pretend that you understood them? Maybe. Or you can ask them to repeat themselves. So how do you do that? How do you say, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What did you say? Well, you got a couple different options there. One that I like to use is ¿cómo? You can say ¿cómo? ¿Cómo? Maybe you meet someone from Chile and they tell you something and you have no idea what they just said. What do you say? You can say ¿cómo? Disculpe? Sorry, I didn't quite catch any part of that 30-second long monologue. Could you repeat all of that, please? Another one you can say is perdón? Perdón? Comprende? Puta? If you're in Mexico, it's very common to say mande, mande. But it is very Mexican. So if you're traveling to other parts of Latin America, maybe stick with something more generic. Now, for those of us visiting Latin America from other countries, from America, from Canada, from wherever it may be, from Antarctica, here's a concept for you. You walk into a store and you make eye contact with the person who works there. What do? It's not a trick question. How about hello? How about good morning, good afternoon? How about greeting the person that you just made eye contact with?
Sí.
Señor Edwin, mucho gusto. Le habla Juan David Castro del área preferencial de Claro Móvil. ¿Cómo se encuentra usted en el día de hoy?
You might want to consider saying buenos días or buenas tardes or buenas noches, depending on what time of day it is. Now, one note about that. One mistake, I don't know if it's a mistake, but one thing I've done when I've traveled to Latin America is I tend to say, and this is a habit from English, I will say, hola, ¿cómo estás? I don't recommend you do that. ¿Cómo estás, in Spanish, at least in my experience, is not a formality. It's actually an invitation to start talking. ¿Cómo estás? And they'll say, pues bien, ¿cómo está usted? So if you ask someone, ¿cómo estás? They will think you actually want to know how they're doing. they might actually respond.
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien, gracias.
Muy bien, gracias.
Maybe that's just been my experience, but I recommend you stick to buenas tardes or buenos días or buenas instead of saying ¿cómo estás? Oh, one phrase I found very useful is the phrase se puede. Se puede. Se puede is a useful recipe phrase that roughly translates to is it possible? Now, you could use it on its own, I suppose, but usually you'll combine this with some other action. For example, you're about to check out at the grocery store and you realize you don't have any cash. So maybe you say, con tarjeta se puede, or se puede pagar con tarjeta, which would mean, is it possible to pay with credit card? So se puede is a very useful phrase. Anytime you want to ask for permission to do something, or if you want to ask about the possibility of doing something. For example, maybe there's a national park. You want to say, ¿se puede visitar el parque durante la noche? Can you visit the park during the nighttime, for example? Maybe you're entering a nightclub and you want to film a video for your Instagram. You can say, ¿aquí se puede grabar? Can you film here? ¿Aquí se puede grabar? So, se puede is very useful. Another useful phrase I found is the word no más. No más. Now, I'm not sure, this could be a kind of a mexicanismo, like a Mexican word, but in Mexico I found it very commonly used. So, no más is basically a way to say just. So, if you want to kind of tone down what you're saying, you can say no más. So, someone asks you, ¿para qué nos visitas? For example, or ¿qué haces aquí? You can say, pues no más viajando, or no más estoy de vacaciones. So maybe you're checking out at the grocery store and they say, ¿sería todo? You can say, sí, no más esto. ¿Cuántos días llevas aquí? How many days have you been here? Pues no más 2 días, or something like that. Another example is, I found myself saying like, disculpe, te puedo hacer una pregunta. No más quería saber, yada, yada, yada. I just wanted to know this thing here. So another useful phrase I found is the phrase igualmente. Igualmente. Now, igualmente is kind of another one of those boomerang phrases where if maybe someone wishes you a good evening, que tengas buena noche. Igualmente. Maybe someone wishes you a good day, que tengas un buen día. Igualmente, you can respond right back at you. You too. So it's kind of like a ti. It's a way to send it right back to them. Now you can use it for anything. Que tengas un buen día. Igualmente. Que tengas un buen viaje. Igualmente. Que te atropelle un bus. Igualmente. Now, imagine this unlikely scenario. You're in a foreign land and you're hungry and you want to order some food. How do you do that? ¿Puedo tener una hamburguesa? No, do not say that. What about me gustaría una hamburguesa? Probably not that one either. What about quisiera? Don't say that either. If you want to order food or a drink or order anything really, there's a couple phrases you can use, but you can try me pones. Me pones. Me pones una cerveza, which is kind of like saying, will you put me a beer? So you can say me pones. Or you can say me das. Me das, which is basically the same thing. Will you give me a cerveza? So another one you can try out is me regalas, which has a slightly different flavor to it. It's kind of like saying, will you gift me this beer until I pay for it 10 seconds from now? Now, for all of these, you can also try out the usted form. So if you're feeling extra formal, you can say, me da una cerveza, me pone una cerveza, me regala una cerveza. So you can try the usted form. That one might be perceived as a little bit more formal, a little bit more respectful. Now, I don't think you need to say the word usted, but you could also, if you want to be extra clear, you can say, me da usted una cerveza, or me pone usted una cerveza, me regala usted una cerveza. So you can add the word usted, but I don't feel it's necessary. You can just say me da. Now, one thing to clear up is you might be asking, why not use the command form? After all, you're the man giving the orders. You're the patron. So why are you not saying dame, ponme, regálame mi cerveza? Muchacho, dame la cerveza. Yeah. It's a matter of respect. I mean, you probably wouldn't walk into a restaurant in America and say, hey, give me the steak now. Now, that might be a cultural thing. I've heard, for example, that in Argentina, it's quite common to use the command form, to say, dame mis llaves, and maybe you add por favor, but I'm not sure if that's done in restaurant settings. So anyways, I would recommend you formulate it as a question, especially you're a tourist, you're a visitor. You want people to like you, so don't give them a reason to dislike you. Anyway, hope that helps you when you're traveling to Latin America. I know I'm not the greatest YouTuber of all time. I'm up there, but I'm not number one. So we're learning how to do this. If you've got a better suggestion for a phrase to use in one of these scenarios, feel free to let us know in the comments below. What else we got here? Here. Here's another one on the section called Staying with Locals. I have my own hammock